Hello, and welcome to another great ICMI 2021 video. I am joined today with Dr. Stacy Friedman, who is a clinical sexologist and certified sex coach. How are you doing today, Stacy?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me today. I love the subject of sex, so this will be a great conversation.
And here I was worried that I'd have to be shy about it. I'm just going to be out in the open.
Out in the open.
So I met Dr. Stacy Friedman on her Facebook group for men's sexual health. This is a group that she has that also has a female counterpart, but she separates out the sexes to make it a little bit easier for people to come forward about it. But there is the ability to interact with the females, like say, I could make a post and say, hey, can you please ask the females this question? And then she can give us feedback. Now, she also has her own practice where she will speak to people through the phone or through Zoom or Skype and be able to help people for a variety of issues. Now, she caters to men and women, couples, alternate lifestyles. And today we're going to talk about her interactions with men and to try to better understand what male sexuality is. Unfortunately, we live in a time where male sexuality is seen as a dirty thing, and we really shouldn't. It's not so much that it's bad, it's that there's a misunderstanding of what male sexuality is. So my first question for you today, Stacy, is what got you into this field? Was this something that you always wanted to do to help people with sex, or did you start one path and then you sort of ended up this way?
That is the number one questions people ask me when they find out what I do. As a matter of fact, I was driving in my car yesterday and I have a license plate that says Dr. Stacy, and someone pulled up to me because my car's purple. I like purple, if you can't tell. Everything is purple. And they pulled up next to me. They said, oh, what kind of a doctor are you? And I said, doctor of sex. Whoa, I've never heard of that before. What's that? So that's just something that I've always really had a passion about. Not necessarily sex itself, but just people being free to be who they are. I was judged a lot when I was younger because I was sexually active. I just didn't feel it was right. If it was something that I enjoyed and something I wanted to do, why should we not do it? It was fun. It was enjoyable. You felt good. There is a lot of shame and guilt a lot of times for men and women that develops as you get older. And so I really, really loved being that person that people would come to and feel comfortable with and feel open to talk about sex with through my high school years. They actually called me Dr. Ruth, which I'm sure everybody knows, because they're like, oh, you got to talk to Dr. Ruth. You have a sex issue. This is in high school. So I actually went to college thinking I was going to do sexuality work, but then I went in and actually did ultrasound, which was a little bit more medical. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I really want to get into that sexual realm and help people connect better in their relationships, help people learn their bodies better. And then I had my own issues when I gave birth, where I couldn't have sex for almost 6 years. And I identified as a sexual being. And so I had to learn and really figure out, how can I be intimate? Because I had so much pain and so many problems after childbirth that I said, what am I going to do now? And so I had to learn how to be a sexual being without focusing on penis and vagina sex. And so that really got me interested in the field to help others. And that's where I am today, is being able to say, listen, it's not just about this type of thing. It's about really exploring who you are as a person sexually. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Now, are you able to have penis and vagina sex as of this time?
Absolutely, because after about 6 years, I finally found the right physician, right doctor to do the proper surgery on me to help. But it did take a good 6 years and a huge, huge toll on my previous marriage, because you don't learn what to do. You just kind of do it. You learn human sexuality when you're in school, but they teach you about not getting someone pregnant or not getting a sexually transmitted infection. They don't teach you how to have a relationship, how to have healthy sexual experiences. And so we had to really think out of the box on how to have healthy relations and still having pain. But once I found someone to help, everything, changed. I was able to kind of be myself. But that's another thing that I specialize is with couples that are having issues with one partner having the painful sex, and how the male counterpart can really support and be present and be able to still be satisfied. So that really got me passionate about helping couples, especially that are dealing with those issues.
Why do you believe that our society seems so draconian about sex? Like it's a dirty secret that we're not really supposed to like sex, and that if we do, there's something wrong with us. Both men and women experience this. We're not supposed to express that we have an interest in it. We're not allowed to talk to other people if we have problems about it. Why is our culture built around this when it's something all of us do? And the more we know, the greater the experience can be.
I wonder about that every day. And that's one of the reasons why I love being one of those people to really promote positive sexuality. I think that unfortunately, culture and religion play a very, very huge part, even politics, which I don't really get into much. But those are three major places that I see the most discrepancies many times when it comes to people that come into my office. They've been taught by the person before them, who was taught by the person before them, who was taught by the person before them, and people aren't thinking for themselves. They're just following a culture or a religion or a political background that they feel is speaking for the whole, when really you have to look at yourself as an individual and make up what is right for you. And there's so many times where, let's just say, for instance, culture. I get calls from men all the time who a lot of times will have marriages that are set up and they don't get to choose their partner. Their parents choose their partner. And then they have sexual and intimate issues because their culture is very different. And it's a little bit harder because they can't talk about sex. They're taught not to masturbate. It's what their parents taught them, what their parents taught them. And so what I hope as a sexologist is to let people know, first of all, we were all born as sexual beings. We're coming out and this is us right here. But it's all this other stuff that surrounds us that squashes that sexuality within us. And that's what I hope to try to help people break through.
So I want to shift the focus of the conversation about male sexuality. And we're talking about this is us and then everything else around us. One of the pressures that we men experience is a term that I've sort of coined of caveman sexuality. That men are seen as all we want is just sex and we don't really want anything else. But what's worse is within second wave feminism, there were a lot of people who said that men wanting to have sex with women, even if it's consensual, is a form of rape. And this is something that we kind of get a lot, especially in the men's movement, that we only want to control women. We want to keep women down. We want to have sex and for them to be our slaves. And it's further from the truth. But in your interactions with male clients, have any males come to you expressing that they feel like they're not allowed to enjoy sex?
Half of the people that come to me, half of my clients. I feel many times when I'm speaking to a lot of these men, and actually a couple are actually in the group, they have come to me because they have a healthy sexual desire. And a lot of times what happens is that they're looking at it as sex. And I think a lot of times it's the way that they're expressing themselves, because the majority of men feel connected through their love language of touch, where a lot of women don't necessarily need that touch. And so where the women are looking at men, oh, he just wants to have sex, he just wants to get laid, whatever. The men are looking like, I just want to feel loved, I want to feel desired. But they don't necessarily either understand how to express it or find ways to help their partner feel that desire so that way they can get that affection and attention. And so a lot of times they sit there and they're like, I am constantly getting picked on or yelled at because I want sex. But what they're really trying to say is, I want to feel loved. And the way I feel loved is by being intimate through sex. And so I try to help their partner understand that it's not just about them going like this and doing this. That's how they feel connected. Just as another partner might feel connected by someone getting flowers or being called beautiful or whatever it is. So we have to many times take the one partner, male or woman, and then the male partner, and be able to say, when he's asking for sex, yeah, okay, a lot of times it's fun and they want to get something from it just because why not? But many times it's because they love you, they're attracted to you, they want you, and they just want to feel desire back. So sometimes they need to actually hear that, the women, the partners, they need to hear that and help understand why their partner wants that from them.
One of the other things that happens is mismatched sex drives. And
Yeah.
from my experience, what I've seen, relationship can start off hot and heavy, just get married, and first few years are great. For a lot of women, it's like once children come into the picture, their sex drive almost disappears. And this is especially hard on men because it's like they still want that. That's how they express love, but now their partner doesn't want to do it at all. So there are only two choices, and really it's only one choice of just being in a sexless marriage. Or they can go out and have an affair with someone to get the attention that they need. So how do you help couples that have a mismatched sex drive, especially after having children?
Right. And first of all, it does depend on what their relationship is like prior. Because if they had a crappy relationship prior, having kids is just going to make it worse. The one thing that men have to understand is that when many women don't have a sex drive, a lot of men are going to take it personally because that's how a lot of them feel desired. A lot of times it's not, I talk to so many women, they're like, I find my husband very sexy. I find him very attracted. I'm very in love, but I'm tired. I'm tired. I have these kids hanging on me all day. I'm bringing them to this game, bringing them to that game, bringing them to doing them homework, cooking dinner. They're tired. And so that lack of drive is not really lack of love or lack of affection or partner not being attracted. It's because they're literally exhausted. And depending on the situation, one of the things I always say is, first of all, make sure that there is a balance between what the husband is doing and what the wife is doing. What happens many times is because the woman is exhausted, the man gets mad and the woman gets annoyed that the man's trying to get something. It's just like this whole catch-22, So what I usually recommend is, first of all, no one necessarily likes to schedule sex, but scheduling together time is going to be important when you have kids, even if it's 30 minutes. And make sure that a lot of that time that is scheduled is not all about the intercourse. It's about connecting. And the more that the partners allow each other to connect, if you know that your partner's exhausted, make that 30 minutes about a really nice bath or a really nice massage you can give to each other. So that way they know that not every single time that you're with them, they're expected to perform. Because so many times the women are like, every time I get touched, I have to perform. I have to do something. And it's just another thing I have to check off my to-do list. So if there are times when you realize that it's a really rough day for your partner, but you are wanting something, maybe you can go and just do something nice for your partner, let them see how it feels to just be in a bath, rub their back, whatever. And maybe they might be willing to give a hand job or something like that, where they don't necessarily have to sit there and perform with their whole body if they're exhausted. And then next time, they might be more open to being physical because they know it doesn't have to happen every single time.
What I'm hearing is that oftentimes women want to be romanced. And there's kind of a thing like once you're in a relationship, there's already the romance. Men have already put the work in to get to the romance stage. But sometimes women want a little bit of extra effort because they don't want to feel like they're just some toy for a man. Being romanced, there's the opportunity for reciprocation. But sometimes we kind of get stuck in a pattern of, well, at night we have sex, but now she doesn't want to have sex with me, so I'm going to grow bitter about it. And it's
Right. And I'm
really
not going to do anything.
communication, but they don't know how to communicate with each other about sex because of how our society is. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, like you said, oh, well, she's tired. We're not having sex tonight. So a lot of times the partner won't do anything. And female partners like, well, just because I'm not having sex, he won't snuggle, he won't cuddle, he won't do, there's so many other things to do. And many times, and I'm just going to give an example for myself because it's a great example. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, I've had a very rough time over the last couple of years, and it has affected certain things where I've just been completely exhausted. And I remember laying there, and one time, I had said earlier during the day that we would do something. And then the time came to do something. And I was just saying to myself, God, I really just want to go to bed. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. But you know what? I want to show my partner I love him. And so I said, let's just, I'm really tired. How about we just kiss? Can we just kiss and snuggle? So he said, okay, sure, partner, and show him that I loved him. And then within 10 minutes, I was like, okay, take your clothes off. Let's go. Because I was allowed to just get out of my head. I was allowed to relax. And that will happen sometimes when you don't get mad at your partner for not giving in. Don't be afraid to do something different where maybe they need a little time to relax. And in my case, that's what would happen. If he would have been pissed at me and would have been like, well, you said earlier today you were going to do it, now you're not, we wouldn't have had anything. Because there was patience and understanding, we were able to do something, and it wound up being better than we thought it would be.
I want to say that from the few times that we have talked and seeing you on your Facebook group, that I have grown to appreciate you for the service that you do. And what really impresses me about you is I'm very big on psychology. I love psychology. A lot of trouble that us men have is that there's kind of this feminist influence within psychology these days, that if we go see a psychologist, we're going to get the feminist interpretation of men's issues, that a lot of blame is put onto us. And includes even marriage counseling. If we go to a marriage counselor who's most likely going to be female, they're going to say that we men are the problem. So we tend to avoid it. But in talking with you, especially today, you don't take that approach. You don't just immediately demonize men. It's that both people are responsible for the experience and both people need to understand. My question for you is, when you first started doing this, was this kind of a challenge for you to, balance it out, or did it come easy that, hey, it's a two-way street, two people are involved, or three or four? Had feminism ever had an influence on you in this realm, or were you able to avoid that?
No, I think I was able to avoid that because I always felt each person to be their own. And I saw the good and bad in women and men. But I will tell you, when I first started, I was a little naive, not naive, but I had to change my marketing because I didn't realize how disgusting people could be and how rude. And I say people, and I hate to say this against men because believe me, I love men, but I almost got out of the field because of disrespected I was from pictures people sent without permission, words that people used without permission. Listen, I am the first one to talk about sex in any conversation, and I have zero problems with it whatsoever. But there's respect, there's consent, and that one is key, that consent. Even to this day, I get images that are not asked for. People were getting mad, and I love working with men. So at the beginning, I had to really learn when I was on the phone to really be able to pull out the intuitive nature of who I was and say, this is not the right phone call for me. This one is. Where with women, I never had to do that. So that, I think, was the big difference. But I'll tell you, once I was able to weed out people that I know were not in it for the right reasons, the men that would come to me, it would be like a blessing that I'd be like, okay, I feel for you. Let me help you. Let's get you through this. Let's help you get a better sexual relationship with your partner. And then I really learned how to work with the right people. I think that was big, is just really being able to know through my intuition who was really there for entertainment versus actual wanting to have a better relationship.
So let's talk about the dick pic. This is such an interesting paradigm because with female sexuality, you got tits, your vagina looks amazing, you got your hair, you just got so many areas of sexualness that some could just look at your feet and get off. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to men, unless we are super strong, super fit, we're the exact opposite of sexiness. And the only main appeal is our penis. And so a lot of men feel that, hey, if I send her my penis and she's receptive, then good. But if I alienate her, I'll just move on. Has this sort of issue come up with men you've talked to that they feel that the only value they have is their penis? And what sort of advice do you give to them?
My advice is you couldn't be 100% more wrong. And the reason why I say that is because one of the number one things that people are attracted to is confidence. And when you talk to most women would rather see a smile on a profile picture than a dick pic. And listen, I am the first one to tell you I think penises are beautiful. I think all different body shapes are beautiful. But if I don't know you, or I'm just getting to know you, and you don't ask if it's okay, if I see a dick pic, you're out. Like I said, I think that they're awesome looking. I think that, if anything, I might look and be like, okay, but get rid of you. Because a lot of men are so focused on their performance, their size, their this. I mean, I get people all the time, men asking me, how do I increase my size? How do I increase my size? All these things. Well, you can do so much more with so many other parts of your body than your dick. And that's what I think men need to realize, is that a lot of women that they think, believe me, you're going to have men and women that are attracted to certain things. Like you're going to have a woman say, oh, I only want a guy with a big dick. Or you're going to have a guy say, I only want a woman with huge boobs. You're going to have people like that. But if you really want someone who is quality, who is going to be there for the right reasons, they're going to look at your personality. They're going to look at your smile. They're going to look at how you look at them, how you treat them. They're not going to be as concerned as to what's in your pants if you are treating them the right way, romancing them the right way. It's about sex appeal. It's not necessarily a visual of a penis. What does that do? I've had ones this big and I've had ones this big. It just depends on what you're able to do with your body, your mind, and your mouth too. If anything, people should start sticking out their tongues and sending those pictures, See, hey,
I'm going to start doing that. You won't receive a dick pic from me. You'll be,
I'll get a tongue pic.
A lot of what I'm hearing in this conversation is good sex is not just about our genitals. It's about all of our body and our mind engaging in the moment versus just I'm liking to do this, but the penis and vagina, while that's a great thing to do, it's not the only thing to do.
Well, they also say that the largest sex organ is 6 inches from here to here, in between the brain. That's what Dr. Root says. That's why so many people after so many years wind up in my office, because they're bored. They're just focusing on the penis and vagina. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but there's different positions. There's different ways to touch. There's, you need variety. There's toys. I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't open to some of that. There's a lot of men who are intimidated by toys. And just to let the men know out there, only about 25 to 30% of women can have an orgasm through intercourse. Majority of women do not orgasm through intercourse. They need manual stimulation, oral stimulation, or a toy. If you are a partner that will not allow or gives your partner a hard time for needing to use toys, you have to understand right now you are taking away your partner's ability to feel free sexually. If I had a partner that would not let me use a toy, I would not have that partner. There's no reason why I have to try to explain the best way that I can have an orgasm, because it makes you uncomfortable. Be open to your partner's needs. Let them be open to yours, and you can experience a whole bunch of good shit.
What would you say is male sexuality? From everything that you've talked to men, everything that you've studied, it's still kind of a great mystery to a lot of people, but I imagine you have some great insight into what male sexuality is. Or let me ask it in this way. If a woman came up to you and had a very narrow view of male sexuality, of like, oh, well, men just only want to have sex with me, they don't really see me as a person, how would you talk to that person to let them know that male sexuality is so much more? And in what way is male sexuality beyond the caveman sexuality?
First of all, it depends on what people are looking for. And so I have had people come to me exactly that said those pretty much same things, where they're going out and they're dating and they're on a site and they're just looking for friends with benefits. That's what you're looking for. That's what you're going to get. You know, everyone has to set their own boundaries. And if you find someone that you don't want to be having sex with all the time, I mean, right off the bat, then you have to set boundaries. But they have to understand that men's sexuality many times is a little stronger as far as libido than women, not all the time. But what I believe is that it's how you look at sex. Why is it so difficult for women to enjoy sex with men? I don't know. I think that because of society and the way some men treat women, and I don't mean this in a negative way necessarily, but I'm looking at the way I was treated many times at the beginning of my career, can really put a negative spin on that whole thing. Like you just said, oh, well, men, they're just this caveman who wants sex. But when you really appreciate a man and understand where they're coming from, you will see that men have insecurities like women. Men just want to feel loved like women. Men want to feel desired. Men want to feel happy. Men want to feel experience and fun. When you are opening up your eyes as a female counterpart to just understanding that sex is not just about the in and out, and it's about connecting with your partner, and the man can understand that as well, then you can appreciate what a man needs and wants and look at it in a totally different light. There should be no reason why every man should be looked at as, oh, all he wants to do is get laid. Well, what's wrong with wanting to get laid? Feels good. It's enjoyable. If you're connecting with someone and you want to be in a relationship, you know, to have sex because they want to connect with you, because they love you, they're attracted to you. What's wrong with that? So women a lot of times have to change their mindset to be able to appreciate why a man wants to be with them and not think it's only because of the sex. That's what I try to do. And a lot of times with the women that have like the mismatched sex drive with their man, all he wants is this, all he wants is that. Like, you're married, he loves you. If you want to go out and have a friends with the benefits, then yeah, maybe that's all that they want. And that's okay too. It's just helping women understand that men want to feel loved just as much as they do and want to be desired as well.
I want to share an experience that I've had recently on your site. I want to get your opinion on some conclusions that I found. A very recent term that's come up is toxic masculinity, and that any male behavior that's perceived as not good, not necessarily bad, but not good for women is automatically toxic masculinity, or all masculinity is toxic masculinity. And we're getting bombarded with this all the time. I recently posted a picture that in a first-time encounter, only about 7% of women get an orgasm, which I can believe. It's a first-time encounter. There was not an opportunity to really connect with someone. If you're actually there and you're building something, then that probably increases. But first-time encounters also tend to be one-night stands or just the old in and out. Yes, I'm going to do that every single time I can. So it makes sense. But a response that I got was, oh, well, men need to become more feminized. And what they were specifically meaning is that men need to express vulnerability. And they had this perception that vulnerability was a feminine trait. And I concluded that men and women experience vulnerability, but in different ways. There is such a thing as being vulnerable in a masculine way. The problem that we have as men is that we learn early on that if we show vulnerability, that's kind of what you're saying about confidence.
Or femininity.
Or femininity, that we're not going to be desired. So in a lot of ways, we kind of have to overcompensate and be that overly confident person because we do want to get laid. That was kind of the conclusions that I came up with. What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of agreed with what you were saying, because for me, the more vulnerable and nurturing that my partner is, the more I want to be intimate, the more I want to have sex, because I'm feeling loved and safe and appreciated and listened to. So I think what happens many times is that there is that assumption that I have to make sure that I'm not, looking like a, pussy, and I'm just going to be the strong man. And I'm not going to, be vulnerable and intimate. What is that crap? So many times I hear these men just say, it's so stupid. You watch too many soap operas. What is this intimate stuff? What does that even mean? A lot of times it just helps to give an explanation for a man to understand what might be needed in that. But I just think toxicity is toxicity. And I think, was that you who said that, wrote that? Masculine, feminine, I don't think it matters. I just think that it's who you are as a person, who you're trying to connect with. And I think that it doesn't matter about the femininity or the masculinity. There's a lot of feminine men that can be very attractive. It just depends on, what you're into too. There's people that are attracted to the bad boy and don't want them to be so nice. And that never works out, But I kind of liked your answer on that. Just basically toxic masculinity versus toxic femininity, the tongue twisters. I just feel that can be toxic either way. Not necessarily just men.
And yeah, that's always a case that I make is, well, if women can be toxic and men can be toxic, then we don't need to genderize it. We can just call them toxic people. Right. But certainly a lot of people like to use the term toxic masculinity to try to shut down a conversation. The other component about that, though, is men often learn very quickly that showing vulnerability doesn't seem to get them what they want. And maybe that's the type of relationships they want. But I've certainly experienced this myself, that when I show my vulnerability to women in general, they tend not to see me as a sexual being. The only way I can really show my vulnerability to a woman is if I court her, date her in a relationship, and then I can let my guard down. And I'm sure women experience the same thing, but I've learned that if I want a woman to be interested in me, she needs to see the facade and be attracted to the facade. And then once we establish a connection, I can slowly peel away the mask so she can see the actual me. And how do you respond to that kind of experience? Because a lot of men do experience that sort of thing.
I think a lot depends on the person, because I know when I was dating after my divorce, if I started dating somebody and I saw that they were too masculine in the way of not opening up and not being vulnerable, where I can be 100% myself, I wanted a best friend. I wanted someone that, yes, could be masculine, but then could be tender and nurturing and vulnerable as well. And yes, it did take a little time, but it got to a point where I was almost like, listen, if you're not able to open up, this is not what I want. So you hopefully would have a partner that's either going to ask you to open up or is going to want that or need that. It just depends on the other person. But I understand what you're saying, because you want to protect yourself first and let them see this masculinity that you are kind of like peacocking. You show all the feathers and everything. And then after a while, I get that. But then you might miss out on someone who really wants to have a soft, sensitive man. Is it better to just be who you are and take the risk that someone may not like you? That's your own preference. But I feel that you could still be very masculine and still have sex appeal and then still be vulnerable, because they could be in two different places. You don't have to be vulnerable necessarily where you're being all mushy gushy in the bedroom. You could be vulnerable, share experience, share emotion, and then you get into the bedroom and then you can just put our hands up against the wall and just, be aggressive and do whatever you want to do and show that little bit more aggressive side as a man. But just because you're a man doesn't mean you have to have an aggressive side either. You know what I'm saying? It's a societal, what is a man versus what is a woman? You know, when someone says, oh, be a man, I can't stand that saying, because what does that mean? If you're sensitive, you're not being a man, you know? So society does kind of put a little crutch on that. But I see how you're saying that sometimes you have to kind of put a little bit of a facade, but it depends on what the person's looking for also, if they're going to want to be with that facade or if they really would want to be with you.
That if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. But I think there's something that we can pull from that as men, maybe we start off confident, overly confident, and then we're with someone and we show our vulnerability. If they cannot handle seeing that vulnerability, then they're the wrong person for you. And
Okay.
exit that relationship. That's kind of my thought on that. This kind of goes more into the realm of dating. Most of what you do is for sex, but
I do dating too. I do.
Okay, you do dating too. So one of the problems that has been recently discovered is what's called the 80-20 rule. Right now, it seems very much so that 80% of women want the top 20% of men. And those of us outside that 20%, we're not really seeing that much in the dating realm. They did a study recently and found that more 18 to 29-year-old haven't had sex in the last 12 months, and that the average age of virginity has actually increased quite a bit. And a lot of times what we're seeing is that women are not interested in their own age group. Like if a woman is 18 years old, she wants to be with a man who's 30 years old because he's accomplished more in life. So someone who's 18 who wants to date an 18-year-old, because that's his age range, you know, he's not going to find very much success. What are your thoughts on kind of this perception of this 80-20 rule?
I don't know much about it because I haven't read any studies or anything on it, but I do agree with the fact that the age of virginity has increased, because I've actually worked with a few people recently. One of them was 37 before as a virgin, and another one was 29, and another one was 27. And actually, the other one was 42, and then they had gotten married and wound up having sex finally. So I think that people are waiting a little bit longer. But as far as the age ranges, I think with social media, I think that has a lot to do with the inability for a lot of these people in that age group you mentioned to be able to connect with others. And that is keeping a lot of people disconnected. And a lot of people that are in that age range, those earlier ages, they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to date. And then also, even just with COVID the last 2 years, I have kids in those age ranges. There's been, difficult to interact. They didn't have school. And so when you have an 18-year-old trying to meet an 18-year-old, they don't even know how to talk to each other. And so they're going to look for people who are a little bit older who might have more experience. And that goes also with men. A lot of men, I've noticed, are starting to want to date older women because they feel the younger ones are too much drama or too bitchy, or all they want to do is play on their phones. So I hear it actually from both sides, and I hear it from my kids. I think social media has a lot to do with that age range being disconnected and not really finding their people. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think it's pretty much on point. A joke I like to say, not a ha-ha funny joke, kind of a cruel joke, but we have the greatest communication technology ever known to mankind, and yet we have an inability to actually communicate with each other. I have a cell phone, and yet being able to actually have actual conversations is few and far between for me.
Well, everyone's talking like this.
Yeah.
Did you want to go out? When do you want to go out? What time? Just pick up a phone and talk to somebody.
And I encounter that a lot. I actually just want to talk to people. I mean, I'm a writer. I love to write, but I don't want to have interactions where I'm writing all the time.
Right.
I'll start using voice because
right.
I want to connect, and being able to hear how someone says something. there's a void of it in textual communications. And a lot of times I've actually gotten people angry with me because I write properly.
Like, what?
And they think that I'm being cold and distant. And I'm like, no, I'm just wanting to use capitalization and punctuation. It's practice for me as a writer.
God forbid you put a K. Like, but that's it? Just K? You didn't write anything. It's like, well, I'm on the toilet, or I'm trying to do dishes or whatever. I think that it just has a lot to do with the disconnect between that age range at this point.
Let's say that some billionaire comes to you and says, I'm going to give you a bunch of money to try to fix our society, that people can communicate with each other better, that people can have greater sex with each other. What sort of changes would you try to make society better as a whole?
Well, the first thing is I would take any other avenue that controls a person's body, take it out of the script. Religion, culture. Not that that's going to be ever possible, but there's so much damage I see on a daily basis with relationships when people struggle with their culture and their background. Personally, I want to be out there. I want to be on TV. I want to be on radio. I can't do it myself, obviously, but we have ways to just connect and be able to not be censored. Even on Facebook, I get censored left and right. It's unbelievable. I think it's just the more that people are open about talking about sex, open about protecting sex as far as a birthright, and just being open to communicating with counselors and therapists and coaches. I don't even know what I could do with the money. In marches, I don't know what works, because we're still sitting here fighting. We're still fighting for rights for all different types of communities. We're still, even alternative lifestyles. I have people that are struggling that are not understanding that you can have a healthy alternative lifestyle. And that means swinging, polyamory, open relationship. I have people being judgmental. You can't get rid of judgment from a lot of people, but you can just be out there, communicate, write books, do these types of podcasts and seminars and things, and just get out there. And a lot of that can be free. I don't even need $1 billion. I could take some of it for extra fun, but otherwise it's getting out there and having platforms to promote positive and healthy sexuality.
So we have been talking a little bit more about monogamy and straight relationships. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what's considered alternative, although I don't consider it alternative per se, but let's start with polyamory. Now, I identify as polyamory, but I have met a lot of people who seem to have a disdain for it. But I actually agree with the assessment. Like Lauren Chen said, that it's not as viable for healthy relationships. And I agree with her on that, because most people can't handle polyamory. It's great when you can, but it requires a lot of trust and not letting jealousy interfere. You're going to feel jealous, but you have the ability to say, nope, I don't want jealousy to be a part of this. Do you get people who say, hey, I'm wanting to get into polyamory. How can I convince my wife to do it? And have you encountered a situation that someone didn't really seem ready for it, and you needed to tell them, hey, as great as this is, I don't know if this is something you can handle?
Absolutely. It's one of my specialties, is working with people in those types of relationships, not necessarily just polyamory, but any type of open, swinging, or polyamory. And for those that don't know, polyamory is just basically having, you're having a foundation or a base relationship, and you're able to love others and bring others into the relationship. Let's say you have a heterosexual couple, and then the woman wants to date another man, and they're able to bring that into the relationship, or another woman, and same thing with the man. The difference between that and swinging is that usually with swinging, it's not an emotional connection. Polyamory a lot of times is forming that relationship, where swinging is more about a little bit more on the sexual side, not necessarily the emotional side, even though you still could have some of that with that. I believe that when people come in and they want, I have many people that try to ask about, what do I do about bringing someone in? What if I'm jealous? I've actually had some people that come in and say that they started with a swinging lifestyle, and then they wound up having kids, and they don't want to be in it anymore. And now the partner says, well, they false advertised, they wanted it then and now they don't. And now I'm stuck with her. And these are some of the things that I get. And so there are ways to go about it in a healthy way. And like you said, it can be very difficult. Not everyone can do it for sure, but you have to know what your boundaries are, what you're capable of. Sometimes if you don't know and you're not sure, you have to take little baby steps. And that's kind of what I help guide people as is what are the baby steps? What are questions you should ask? What are things you might run into? You have to kind of play it by ear and know that your foundation is that one main person you're with. If you're okay with dropping everything, if that person's not feeling it or not right, then it could be something that you can experience. But if you feel like you're going to do it, and then all of a sudden that person's going to say no, and then you're like, well, you told me yes, and da, 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 then it may not be right for you. So I help guide people to try to figure out the steps to go forward or even the steps to go backwards. It can be confusing and it can be a little tough, but it could also be very rewarding and fun.
You also deal with LGBT, and in this case, dealing with gay males. And I know that some of the people watching this will be gay. A majority will be heterosexual males, but we have our gay male audience out there. What sort of challenges do they face that they come to you with, and what sort of advice do you give them?
A lot of the relationships, people have a lot of the same issues. So whether you are a part of the LGBTQ community or if you're a heterosexual relationship, a lot of times it can be the same. The one thing that I find with gay men that tends to be a little bit more of the issue is that community may not be as monogamous as some may want. And so a lot of times they have a little bit more difficulty with commitment and being in a monogamous relationship. So I have found that a lot of the gay couples that I have worked with, and when I say gay, I mean just the men, not lesbian, but gay, that has been one of the more difficult concerns because sometimes one person might want to be more monogamous, but the other one may not. That's probably one of the hardest things. And also, as they start getting older, if they are an established gay couple, erectile issues. They have concerns that, their counterpart is more masculine than them because they're able to, stay harder longer and things like that. And so then those issues come up where they're feeling less of a man because they're, those types of things, which are actually a lot in the heterosexual relationships too. But other than that, I don't necessarily feel so much is different between what they need. They're still a couple and they're still working together, trying to figure out their sex drives. People would say, oh, well, you have two men, they're probably always horny. It's not true. That's another kind of myth is that a man is always horny. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I have a lot of women where I have to sit there and yell at them sometimes and say, just because your partner does not have the same drive as you doesn't mean he's not a man. And that's a big thing is that men are expected to always be ready to go and always have a heart on and always, and that also couldn't be further from the truth. Women have to learn how to be nurturing to men in those times, as well as in the gay relationships. They need to be able to support their partner.
That about does it for us today. It has been a pleasure talking to you. And
you too, thanks.
I really love your approach. I love your mentality. I love the advice that you give. What are the best ways for people to reach out to you, especially if they might want to utilize your services?
Well, first of all, you had mentioned about the Facebook group for men. It is called Men, Sex, and Empowerment. So if you go to look it up, it's Men's Sexual Health, but it's Men, Sex, and Empowerment as a Facebook group. So feel free to join on there. And, we're just starting to grow and that hopefully will help. You can go to my website to be able to reach me and it's drstacyfriedman.com, DrStacyFriedman, drstacyfriedman.com. My email's on there, my phone number's on there, and you can reach me there. And there's also a free copy of a PDF for my book that I wrote called Confessions and Lessons of a Sexpert. So you can feel free to download that as well. Thank you for having me on here. I always love to, chat about the subject and helping others. So if anyone wants to reach out, I do offer 15-minute complimentary consults just to make sure the services are right for you.
Well, I guess this interviews count as my 15 minutes. So, all right.
I'll give
Well,
you an extra 15.
I thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I've had a pleasure talking to you today, and I hope you have a good day.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye bye.
All right. Take care.